position the camera so I should see when people are there. Alright. 15 seconds in. I usually have a viewer by now. And there we are. I always love when I go live on my channel. People show up right away. Hello, Billy. I just try to go live on this New Witch channel where I do that often, but now I need admin approval. I have to wait around. So I ain't waiting around. I'll go on Uncle Birch's channel. People will be there immediately. Day or night. Doesn't matter what day it is. Doesn't matter what time it is. Uncle Birch goes live on his channel and people show up. Hello, Ryan. Thanks for posting Hexfest. Yeah. I took some liberties with that one. And the rest is available on my Gumroad page available. But yeah, I took some liberties with that because that's my content. But I was only allowed to post publicly the first episode. So hello, Amber. Yes, you are. You didn't tell me that you were my student till like the second day. That's crafty. I love that. I think that's you. Yeah. Just back from Hexfest. Had a fabulous time. Hello, Sasha. It's funny, I sound like I'm talking to my kid when I say hello to you. That's his name. But that's TMI. You don't need to know that. Yeah, just got back from Hexfest. I did post the first of the 3 workshop series. And then the rest of it, I posted them all in one package on my Gumroad page just today, and it's selling like hotcakes, like immediately. But the Art of Magical Warfare, had a fabulous time. It's my first time doing an event like that, hosting an event. People just don't ask. Just had the people at with the Conjure Gala. They go, "Well, shit, we didn't know you were available. We thought you were too busy." Could have asked. Christian Day asked me, so I showed up at Hexfest. I'm just so seldom asked. People think I'm too busy, but you know, this is part of my job, being out in the world teaching witchcraft. You know, if you're going to teach witchcraft full time, you got to get that shit out there all the time. So I haven't even put out the plug yet, but you, my special listeners, you'll get to find out about it right away. I'm having to schedule another class. Hello, Aria. Let's see, I started one March, and it filled up, and then I had to start with May, belting, then Lamas, Lunasad, because the classes just keep filling up, and I keep having people chomping at the bit for the year and a day class. There's a lot of people that come into the last class and ask me, you know, when's the next class going to be? So hopefully you watch the live videos, because so far it's the major Sabbats. I'm having to schedule my next year and a day course to start on Samhain. That'd be a special time, but haven't even put out the promo on that on this channel yet. But you people that, you know, were subscribed and tuned into the live video and were paying attention, well, you're the first to know. Another class coming. Going to start Samhain. Another one of Uncle Birch's year and a day courses, but I'll put out a promo on that really soon here. But yeah, now I'm traveling around live. Love the Hexfest video on protection magic. Yes, well, a little more than protection magic, but yeah, I mean, it's protection on steroids. So at any rate, outside of plugging the classes and stuff, if you don't know me, I'm Uncle Birch, and I teach witchcraft for a living. That's my job. And sometimes I'm doing community service and teaching for free. Sometimes I'm getting paid. A lot of times when I'm getting paid, I'm like in bed or something. People that download the classes, I hear from them in the email. It's no fuss, no muss. I love that, the sound of the ka-ching when I'm in bed or doing something else. But at any rate, I do this thing as a community service because of all the disinformation and lack of information I see out here on the information superhighway regarding witchcraft. Now, this is Ask Uncle Birch. We have a couple rules, only a couple rules, because I'm an anarchist. Try not to ask me a question when I'm answering a question. Try not to be too long-winded when asking your question, because I have a very small window to see the question in. Good idea to copy your questions so you can paste it, because I will probably miss it several times. Confused. We already have the first question. Somebody wanted to talk about, I need to talk more about servitors. And as I said, you watched the Hexfest course, I believe. I mentioned Phil Hine. You got to get out there on the internet. You got to read yourself some Phil Hine. Phil Hine had two main books in print, Prime Chaos and Condensed Chaos, but all the material that made up those books was previously published on the internet in different names and things by Phil Hine. So the majority of his work is free and available on the internet, and the best read for anything chaos magic, anything sigil magic, and chaos magic, of course, is where we get servitors too. Servitors are artificially created spirits in a way, built to serve the magician, to be servants, which we really don't want to do. We don't want to make familiars of our pets. That's what they are. They're servants, forced into servitude. That's a familiar by the classical standard. Servitors, you're going to need to go read. There's only so much I can just rant off about servitors. I do have a video on my YouTube page here, something about the new gods. Meet the new gods. And those are things beyond servitors. Those are same principle. But a servitor created to be used quite often, an egregore will bypass their original program and become kind of what we would call an artificial god form. Artificial is an interesting word, because in reality, when we study these things, we created the gods. We created them out of the whole of the Godhead, the energy of the universe. We as humans needed to personify them, give them faces, give them attitudes, and those things evolve on their own and develop new attitudes, new likes, dislikes. But ultimately, we created the gods and the goddesses out of the whole. And creating servitors and egregores is an extension of that, or it kind of shows you how that happened. But you got a lot of reading to do. I can't explain all that to you. It's an entire magical system. Somebody just asked, can you explain chaos magic? Try. Chaos magic's based on chaos theory, and you may have heard it, the butterfly effect. The idea that a butterfly on the other side of the planet can cause a hurricane on another side of the planet. Cause and effect on a global scale. Chaos magic is an innovative form of magic that has utilized all of the classical magics. And matter of fact, most chaos magicians are more studious in the classical ceremonial magics and all of the magics than probably most of you. Chaos magicians are very studious, but then they take it to a whole other level. They will incorporate science fiction, fantasy, into their works. Phil Hine, who I just spoke of, he had an entire pantheon of Star Trek gods or egregores based on the original Star Trek. If he needed some of these ass kicked, he'd call up Kirk. If his computer was having a problem, he'd call on Spock. If his car broke down, he'd call on Scotty. On and on and down. Everybody has their things. Communications, they call on Uhura if he wants good communications. And his rationale behind it was brilliant AF. He said that your average pagan god has one or two stories associated with them, and the telling of those stories over time is what gives power to those gods. Whereas a Star Trek character has 5 years of stories, just the first Star Trek. We ain't even got to the TNG yet, but 5 years of stories, an almost cult following of people that we call Trekkies that put a huge amount of energy into their Trekkiness And they're there watching every single thing, waiting to challenge any inaccuracy involved in their trekkiness. That's energy. That's a large amount of energy. And his rationale, if you could look that up, find those stories, his rationale made as much sense as anybody's God forms. It's just kind of more taking the reins of the process as we humans create these things out of the whole. And once we create them, they evolve and they develop their own processes. If you want to really look at the egregore idea, there's another book that you need to have. I don't know if I put this on my Amazon influencer account yet, but of urban gods. And the urban gods are actually egregores based on the way they're created in the book. There were a threefold goddess and a threefold god. And I believe the god was Sarge, Slick, Scram. I don't know. Sarge is a god that yells at you and calls you a maggot when you need to get up and accomplish your fucking work. Slick is when you need to slickly get yourself through some situation, or maybe get yourself laid. These are male gods, right? Scram is the one that teaches you, gives you the impulse to leave an area when it's going to be dangerous. I think those, I could be wrong, Scram might be one of the females, but on the female side we got Squat, Score, yeah, maybe it's Scram. So you need to read the book. I can't even remember all of them, but Squat's a classic, and you may have heard me talk about Squat. Hello, Fast Care Sexy. You may have heard me talk about it on this show before, but back in my day, sometime in the 80s, these Isaac Bonowitz coven in Berkeley created an egregore to become a god. And it was meant to excel its programming, become bigger, develop worshipers, and the god's primary focus was getting you a parking spot. And it was in Berkeley. Now, within a couple years, every Samhain news agencies all over the world, they'll have a witch on. They'll go to a witch store, they'll talk to them. We become a little puff piece for the fucking media, but we get our publicity there. But there's a store called Enchantments in New York, East Village. I don't know New York, but one of the villages. And they had Squat. And originally, Squat over here, originally you fed people's parking meters as an offering to Squat, stopping people from getting parking tickets when you saw an expired meter, and you did it in the name of Squat, and that's how Squat derived its power. But then, within a couple of years, when I saw these East Village people doing it, they said, well, okay, there's a little thing. Squat, find me a spot. Squat, find me a spot. It's like Rochambeau. Now Squat had developed a little chant, a little hand sign, and Squat had evolved that all on its own. That was not the original programming of the egregore to become a god, Squat. And when I first started at the first witch store in Santa Cruz, they knew it was Squat, and they had these little, they were called squeaky nuns. It was kind of like a squeaky dog toy, but it was a nun. And these, squeaking these, having this on your dashboard, squeaking this little nun, was an offering to Squat. You find a parking spot. Now, this thing boils around for a decade or so, and then Urban Primitive comes out. Have a triple pantheon on each scale, 3 goddesses, 3 gods. But Squat's there. But now, back in the day, they told me that Squat was an ancient god of parking. And this woman told me, is like, all the way back to Rome, they had the god Squat, because apparently, I don't know, parking your chariot was a problem. This is a story they told me back at when I started this witch store. And I just kind of looked, and I smiled, and I nodded. I absolutely studied Isaac Bonowitz, and I knew exactly where Squat came from. But right before my eyes, Squat had developed a mythos, a history, stories being told about Squat, dating all the way back to ancient Rome. This was, it's not true, but the stories add to the power of Squat. Now, when Squat comes out in Urban Primitive, Squat's now a goddess. Squat transgendered herself, what you transgendered or herself? I don't know, but transgendered into a woman, a goddess. a large, robust woman with a big ass. And now squat will not only squat you a parking spot, it can squat you a house. It excelled its programming and also became a goddess of housing, a place to squat your ass. And developed another set of offerings, dirty jokes and limericks. And squats always worked for me, even back when I had the squeaky nine. But we know, my wife knows one limerick, about the dude from Nantucket. And she doesn't care that she heard it before, man. We get a spot. We're in fucking Hollywood proper here. Parking is a bitch. But with squat, you get a spot every time. And that's somehow answering your question about servitors. And I went into the public servitors, which, yeah. Let's see, are you taking the today? Oh, okay. You guys are talking back and forth. Okay, I thought that was a question. Okay. And yes, I think that person is in my class. It sounds familiar. It's funny. I went to Hex Fest. Now, I did meet two students that I was expecting to meet that I'd never met before because I teach correspondence courses and they live in fucking Canada. Then I met another one. I think she's here. So I met at least three of my students. I've never seen their faces before. What's that? Advice for ex-Christians who are fearful of hell but interested in paganism. Oh, well, sure I do. It's public knowledge and admitted by church scholars at this day in history, or this time in history, that was a creation to control the masses. The entire idea of hell. Now, again, if you don't know, now you know. Uncle Birch is an anarchist. An anarchist believes in personal responsibility. An anarchist, contrary to popular belief, does not believe in no government. An anarchist believes in self-government. In other words, as Utah Phillips once said, an anarchist is a person that doesn't need a cop to make him do the right thing. I don't need somebody with a gun standing in between you and me to make me not violate your rights. That's ultimately why we have police. I won't do that because it's just not the right thing to do. I don't need to do that. It's not necessary. It's just not right. I govern myself. I don't need somebody to force me to do it. If I don't attack you only because there's a cop there, I'm an asshole. I'm violent. I'm abusive. I'm a bad guy. I'm a bad hombre. I'm a scumbag. If you just don't sin because you're afraid of burning in hell, you don't do bad things because you're afraid of burning in hell, you're not a good person. You're motivated by fear. Do good things just because, and then you're a good person. But this whole threat thing, that does not exist in witchcraft. Some people, having come over from Christianity, tried to impose that thing and tried to tell us the stories of the Wiccan Rede and the threefold law, and they will tell it as some sort of judging scheme upon us, imposed upon us by the gods. I know of no gods or goddesses in witchcraft, Wicca, or anything else that are Jehovah's sitting up on the cloud, judging us for our evil deeds and punishing us after death. What I know of in the craft, God's a payback and justice. If you do wrong, you do better in this life. You don't wait for karma. If you recognize that you've done the wrong things, do something to remedy that. If you can't fix the things that you've done wrong, become a better person. Learn how not to do that again. At least that is an accomplishment that the gods in the universe may recognize. If you just don't do wrong because you're under a threat of, what's going to happen if you do wrong, you are wrong. You are a bad person. Don't be ruled by that. This is for the sheep. Witchcraft doesn't have anything like this. The Wiccan Rede and the threefold law have tried to be imposed upon witchcraft, mostly from people coming from a Christian upbringing that needed some sort of a threat to make them good people and good witches, not do bad things to people all the time. You should just evolve. Now, the craft in ancient context, in older context, was called the way, and it was also called the ways. These are some older words. When we see people talking about the way or the ways, these are older craft terminologies. Now, my tradition is extremely older, and it carried the full sentence. The way to perfection was the words. And the idea was that the gods, God, the goddess, whatever you have, is a perfected version of ourself. Since we are the children of that creator, we have the absolute ability to evolve into something that big and something that good, like a puppy evolves into a dog based on its parents. If that's our parent, we can evolve into that. And in that, it should be perfect. Now, within the Bible, if we're to read the Bible literally, which I don't suggest you do, we have this God, Jehovah. He's kind of tweaky. He's kind of got some problems. All the way back to the Garden of Eden, he told Adam and Eve, if you eat of this fruit, you will ultimately perish. And then the snake come along and said, if you eat of this fruit, you will gain the knowledge of good and evil in your own existence. They ate of this fruit and gained the knowledge of good and evil in their own existence and did not ultimately perish. In that story, the snake told the truth and Jehovah lied. Now, right away, the first God on the scene in the text is a fucking liar. Did he smite me? Am I a pillar of salt? I say it right now. Jehovah was first a liar, and then he was a jealous, tweet God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me, for I am a jealous God. He said that. Everybody had a problem with that, worshipped other gods. He rained fire and brimstone down upon their cities and turned people into pillars of salt. Bad guy. I'm sorry. You call me a heretic. I've been called a heretic before, but not worthy of me looking up to. I'm not a liar. I am not jealous. I am not tweaky. I do not commit mass genocide on people that don't follow me. That kind of God is not perfect. That kind of God is filled with the imperfections of humanity, and to me, not worthy of looking up to. And whenever I run into these kinds of things in gods, I recognize that these are things that humans imbued into the gods, rather than, the gods themselves being that way. Hell has been, oh God, get off my screen already, you fucking notification. I hope it didn't go anywhere. There we go. These kind of gods that are trying to force you into being a good person, they're not the right kind of gods. There are things, and there's a lot of the pagan gods, the Greek and the Roman, they, fought with each other, jealousy, rivalry, this kind of thing, things not to look up to. But the thing we have to recognize, Christianity, paganism, whatever you have, these gods have been built by humans, and they contain human problems. Now, in most of you probably know on my channel, Uncle Birch is also a Polero. I don't talk about it that much. Other people like to talk about me being a Polero all the time, but I don't bring it up. I'm also a priest of Palmame, and that is an African traditional religion. And in that African traditional religion, the majority of the houses are homophobic. And they are taught that there are packed gay Poleros, and that you can't be gay and be a Polero. Yet I know more gay Poleros than I know straight Poleros. Maybe, I get along with gay guys. I don't know, maybe that's it. But I know more gay Poleros than straight Poleros. Because in that system, there's a spirit called the Nkisi. And you go before the spirit of the Nkisi, and if the Nkisi says you can come to the party, you get to come to the party, and none may say your name. And somehow the Nkisi all over the world, and even all the way back to the motherland of Cuba, has accepted gay people right and left. In Palmame, there is an extreme amount of male dominance in the tradition. Yet, the tradition doesn't support that. It's like women can be scratched, women can do. If the Inkisi says the woman can do it, which they often do, then they can do it. But the people in Palo will say, no, women can't do this, only men can do that. But yet, there are Inkisis who have said that women can cut, which I won't explain what that means to you, but there is human bigotry, human sexism, human homophobia placed upon these spirits. I believe that gods recognize no borders. They don't care about your sexuality. They don't care about your skin color. These are human problems. And when I find people imbuing their spirits and deities with human problems, I have a problem for that, because I want to look up to my spirits. I want to look up to my ancestors. I would hope that when I pass from this world, I will be a better being than when I left. That I will not be on the other side and be a racist bigot and a homophobe and filled with all of the crap that humans have, which I'm not filled with those as a human. But I would hope I would be a better person. Some people talk about their ancestors, having a problem working with white people because of what their ancestors went through. Well, I would hope that, once they've passed, they would have a clear vision on that. And maybe they would recognize it. Before, slavery was about color. It was about class. The Greeks enslaved their enemies. The Romans enslaved their enemies. Rome was created off of conquering the Etruscans and stealing their women, so enslaving their women. So they killed all the men. They had a classic story. They had a party and drugged all the men, killed them off in their sleep, and stole all their women. And two brothers, Romulus and Remus, founded many children off of these stolen wives, enslaving their enemies. Now, these enemies were not of a darker skin. It had nothing to do with that. It had something to do with class, something to do with warfare. And many cultures did that. There's countless tales of African kings enslaving their enemies, conquering their enemies, and even selling off princes and royalty from other clans that they had conquered. This is, so in that context, it was not just rich and poor, but more often the slavery is about rich and poor. It eventually becomes about race here in America, but was not always the thing. Many people have ancestors that were slaves, and maybe all the way back to the Greek and the Roman. I don't know, but it's always been a class war. We're sitting around looking for a race war. Now, I would hope that my ancestors, once disembodied and floating around on another plane, could see that. Yes, and power. It's about class and power. In many cultures on this planet, the poor suffer and the rich don't. And quite often, the poor are enslaved by the rich. And it was, most often the poor blacks, and sometimes they were enslaved by the rich blacks. It's a much more complicated story than we want to look at, because it can't be contained in a bumper sticker or an easy slogan that we can throw around. Somehow I was making a point. Oh yeah, Apollo Mayon. I think my ancestors are more evolved when they're on the other side, and other people tell me all this kind of crap. It's like, I don't know, man. I talk to my ancestors, and they never fill me full of that shit. They never say, the woman can't do that, the gay man can't do that, you can't do that. Blah, 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 blah. I have not experienced that, but people hold really strongly to that, and in that tradition, they'll even attack each other for differing beliefs in that. And I think that's a travesty in any tradition that does that. One of the reasons why I don't talk much about that tradition. I don't do that. I don't want somebody to throw on me because I'm a Polaro that disagrees with them. So we're doing Ask Uncle Birch, this little thing I do. Had a few good questions so far, but if you have a question, go ahead and throw it out. Any type of magic is fair game. I probably have something to say. You already know. Let's see. Oh God, a lot. It says in the Bible to judge judge what is good and evil. The apple was the book. Okay. What do you think about it? What? Can't even wrap my head around that one. Sasha. I'm going to answer Sasha. I know the girl or boy, you never know with me like Sasha. How do we know what we do is good? Well, you know, a lot of the noobs out there are going to tell you intention is all that matters, and I don't think that's true. But the right intention with the right amount of study, you'll know what you do is good. Study is going to mean you experiment, you keep notes, you learn how your magic can sometimes go left when you were aiming right. Little variables. Magic is a science, and science is the tracking of variables. In magic, we have way too many variables to track, so we're trying to track all the ones we can, like the planetary movements, the sun, the moon phases, all of these kind of things, and the phases in our lives. We're trying to track all of the variables we can so we can keep good notes. And so if that spell turned out a little off, we can figure out how to tweak that thing and make it on. So we know what we do is good with the right intention, the right amount of study, and the right amount of practice. I always recommend, you know, starting with small spells that are not huge enough to, you know, change your entire life if they turn out wrong, but a lot of them, a lot of spells, all the time, keeping notes and keeping track. But I also recommend in my classes that after we finish that spell, we take that notebook and we slam it in our face and tell ourselves, we're not going to look at that book again for 3 moons. At least 3 moons. It may manifest before that, but that's a good window to give. Fast, cars, sexy. I think you've been here for a while. I spoke about chaos magic. Chaos magic, they can do almost anything. From chaos magic, we get sigil magic. If you've seen sigil magic, then it is through chaos magic. But ultimately, chaos magic is rooted in some of the original grimoires. The Solomon's work, Agrippa, Abramelin, these kind of things. And back in that context, in that time, let's go to Solomon. Solomon believed that he was using these symbols that he created to trap spirits and demons within them. And then he could use the symbol later to force that demon or spirit to do his bidding. Now, over time, our idea, our language changes. Language is really important in magic, but it's the common language of the time that is recognized by our spirits in our universe. And the common language of our time, when we say the word spirit, we don't necessarily mean ghosts, you know, floating around, Casper and shit like that. Spirit is an energy. It's the energy of an idea, the spirit of a place, the spirit of a concept. So in that, chaos magic is taking a sigil to embody a concept within a symbol, and then we work magic on that symbol, because the subconscious part of our mind from which witchcraft comes does not recognize words. It speaks in a language of symbols. So chaos magics come up with ways of turning those words into symbols, thereby being in forms of chaos magic. They're just looking at the sigil right before they go to sleep, having the sigil be the last thing they see before sleep, imprinting it on the subconscious mind, allowing all change to cause here. You'd be surprised how much causing the change up here is going to affect out there. All right. Well, that was a good one. So we're doing Ask Uncle Birch. If I missed your question, try it again. The Sumerians were amazing. Yes, they were. The Romans used magic to grow their empire. In what ways currently? Did the Romans use magic to grow their empire? And in what ways currently? elites use magic? Absolutely they did. Robo went back and forth. It was mostly pagan, and then towards the end, it flipped back and forth. It'd be Christian for a while, and then it'd go back to pagan, and be, ultimately ending up Christian or Catholic. But absolutely, all of the emperors had court magicians, and I can never remember the emperor. There was one emperor who first passed laws against witchcraft. And somebody said Constantine. It's like, no. Constantine's way further down. But one of the first Roman emperors to pass laws against witchcraft had a medium and astrologer in his employ, and this medium had foretold that somebody born on a certain day with, I think it was THE in the beginning of their THE, I don't know, it's a certain amount of letters. It might have been Justinian, I don't remember. But certain letters in this person's name was going to be the one that was going to rise up and one day conquer that emperor. The emperor went on infanticide. He went on an infanticide campaign, killing all males born that day with names anywhere close to that. So while he passed laws against magic, persecuted people for practicing magic, he had a magician in his employ, and based on that magician's advice, went and committed infanticide across Rome. One of the oldest curses we know of is taking an enemy's name and inscribing it on a sheet of lead. Then each day, going backwards, we cross out one letter of the enemy's name all the way back. Ancient Roman curse, really fucking good curse, especially if you incorporate some other stuff. But all world leaders, except maybe Trump, employed magicians or astrologers. A lot of the magic we have to this day comes from the studies of Arthur Edward Waite. The reason why we have the tarot deck that we have to this day is because of Arthur Edward Waite. And he was employed by the Queen of England. So it's up to modern times. The Reagans had an astrologer. The Clintons had an astrologer. Now, astrologer, back in my day, astrologers were usually witches. But now it can kind of be a singular vocation, not always associated with witches. We know Arthur and Merlin, but the thing that people don't seem to understand about that one, Merlin was not a person. It was a title. It was kind of like high priest in a certain rank of the Druids. So there were several Merlins, but Taliesin was the name of the Merlin that worked for King Arthur. And we, could see in the legends, King Arthur was one of those turning points where, King Arthur was king because he was part pagan blood and part Christian. And that's why it was a special time back then. But all world leaders. And then Hitler was all about mysticism. It was all about the cult. It was all about an ancient, a revival of ancient heathenism to further a sense of nationality within his people. And then because of Himmler influencing Hitler, Hitler and Himmler believed that the SS, the reincarnated Knights of the Round Table, they had a castle in Bavaria that they believed was Camelot. And furthermore, they developed archaeology. The Nazis either invented archaeology or excelled beyond anybody's comprehension of archaeology, because the Nazis were obsessed with ancient mystical weapons of war, and specifically the 5 treasures of the Tuatha De Danann. Looks like Tuatha, but it's Tua. The ancient indigenous Irish fairy people, a very dark-skinned race. And this is where we get all of the Irish gods. Like one of them was Lu's sword, which we would know as Excalibur. Excalibur has the same mythos, and Lady of the Lake, and all that stuff. would have been Lu's sword. There's also Lu's spear. Lu's spear was said to be launched from Lu's hand, and the gods in the Celtic pantheon were like, part god and part mythical warrior. They fought in the battles with the warriors. Lu's spear was said to go out on the battlefield and wipe out entire legions of Roman warriors and then return to Lu's hand. Now, legend has it the Nazis actually found this one. They found Lu's spear, and their back engineering of Lu's spear led to the rocket, the missile, which the Nazis invented. Could be, I don't know. Legend has it. They're also looking for the Holy Grail. The Cauldron of Caradwen. In ancient Celtic legend, they would throw dead warriors into the Cauldron of Caradwen, and they would rise up out of that cauldron, some sort of like zombie warriors, like in a lot of our video games and shit. And that's actually where they got that idea for the video games. Ancient legends. So let's see how Lu's sword, Lu's spear, Cauldron of Caradwen, the Holy Grail. And there was one more, and this one, I'm drawing a blank on the last treasure of the Tuatha De Danann, but there was one other one that was not one of the treasures of the Tuatha De Danann, and this was fascinating because it was one of the ancient treasures of the Jews. And you know how you had a problem with the Jews? Well, often that's the case. You try and wipe out the people that possess knowledge that you don't. That's where genocide often comes from on this planet. But y'all remember Indiana Jones? That's loosely based on a true story. The Nazis definitely wanted the Ark of the Covenant, and they were searching for that motherfucker. So loosely based on actual history. The Nazis were not Christian by any stretch of the means. They were obsessed with the occult, and ultimately were done in by the occult, the British witches experiment, or the British witches spell that they cast a shield around England to stop Hitler from landing. Ultimately might have led to his demise, because if you really follow your war history, which Uncle Birch definitely does, it was winter arriving several months early in Russia that crushed Hitler. I mean, also the fact that Russia had a huge amount of reserves that were on the eastern coast. They somehow got assurances that the Japanese were not going to attack from over there. So there's just millions of troops to bring up from that front to the main front, while Hitler's troops were dying in the snow. And by the time these troops reached Hitler's troops, the line was already broken. The line was already beaten. So a student of magical warfare history like your Uncle Birch would have to say, it was Mother Nature that kicked Hitler's ass ultimately. That Russian winter. And if Hitler had studied Napoleon, he would have never made that mistake. But Hitler was not very studious. Good thing for us, we all be speaking German. All right, we'll do a couple more. I'm at 44 minutes, and we have entertaining to do and stuff, and I'm father stuff. And yeah, I got stuff to do, right? Basque County, Spain. Oh, you got me there. I do know that the Basque, particular portion of Spain. Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Basque another country within Spain? I thought I saw something like that. I thought Anthony Bourdain was there or something. Basque was an actual sovereign country within Spain. But the amount of mysticism and old school techniques and stuff from there, there was a lot. I don't specifically know, but I do know that they kept a lot of their ancient roots. This is one thing that I've always tried to throw out here. Here in America, we're talking a lot about cultural appropriation a lot in magical circles. Now, again, Uncle Birch, that's his history. Once upon a time, the east coast of the United States was England. Midsection of the United States was France. The west coast was Spain. Uh, Wars were fought between America and Spain. Well, I think that was after we became America. We fought the wars with Spain. Um, the French, we bought it cheap. I think actually the French sold it to Spain. It went back and forth a couple times, but ultimately, we bought the midsection of the country very cheap. But we have three old colonial cultures occupying this land. Pagans in all of these cultures, very persecuted. Spain, the Spanish Inquisition, you've heard of that, right? France was very Catholic. England was Church of England, which actually broke from the Catholics, but still, all those versions are persecuting witches. So the people of pagan persuasions that arrived in this country before it became America hit the ground running. Up into the hills, up into the forests. This country was seeded with old world European paganism way before it became America and the American concept. These old school magics are ingrained in this land, and the ideas exchanged between these magical cultures, they'll never go away. The cultural appropriation horse left the gate a long time ago, but I always recommend, it's like, if I'm practicing a magic from another culture, I want to learn everything about that magic. I want to learn something about that culture in respect to that culture. But there's no going back. There is no pure version of any magical system. All magical systems, especially in America, have been influenced by all the other magical systems, in addition to the French, the Spanish, the English, the slaves. The slave cultures brought in. These magics were exchanged between magical people for good reasons or bad reasons. We can call it stolen, whatever. But this country was a melting pot. And when it became America, it was all these impoverished countries, people coming from over here. The people, some of the first to come here, the Italians and the Irish wished, they probably wanted to own slaves. I'm sure they were not, cool with that. It's not like they were not racist. The Irish were not considered whites until shortly before John F. Kennedy was made president. That was a huge pinnacle for the Irish people. They were once called lower than the Negroes in Congress. These were papers in Congress. The Italians, likewise. We all lived in, it is after slavery, all this happens. When the real influx of immigrants happened, we all live in ghettos. Our little ghettos, broken off by a geographical location, Little Italy, Hell's Kitchen, Harlem, these kind of things. But we're all in our own little ghettos. The rich are up somewhere else, in fucking Manhattan or something. I don't know where the hell they are. But the poor are all congregating around each other, and this is where we find a huge amount of, witchcraft and folk magic. Witchcraft and folk magic, being different than high magic and ceremonial magic, was the magic of the people. And quite often it was the only way that the peasants could get justice. We couldn't buy off law enforcement, we couldn't buy off politicians, we couldn't buy off cops, and the rich always had a better day in court, and lawyers and shit like that. The mafia eventually becomes that. It becomes the police for those who can't call the police in Italian culture. But the mafia retained a huge amount of its mysticism and magic behind the scenes, and some of their initiation rituals mimic very closely old Strega initiation rituals. Let's see if we have any more questions. I'm at 49 minutes. I'll do two more, then I really got to go, and thank you for joining me. New classes. I just posted my entire 3-part lecture series on the art of magical warfare on my Gumroad page at gumroad.com/witchschool, which is of course WITCHSKEWL. And I got another year and a day course going to be starting on Samhain, and you're the first to hear. Can the subconscious see the sigil that is placed on a black background using a black marker? It's brilliant, John. Absolutely it can. Subconscious is powerful as fuck. Uh, if we're to believe the Christians, they could even put stuff backwards in old rock and roll to make us worship Satan. I haven't really seen any data to say that the subconscious can do that, but it probably can. Subconscious. When we're getting into programming our subconscious and utilizing for this kind of thing, let's say like subliminal programming. Subliminal programming, we usually have suggestion being spoken lower than human audibility. In other words, it's lower tone than is audible to the human ear. When the subconscious comes across something like that, it keys in. So the subconscious is totally keyed into that, even though you may just hear a little bit of whisper. So the subconscious is keying in on things that you're not consciously seeing, like even subliminal imagery in commercials on TV is being keyed in by your subconscious, even though your conscious is not recognizing it. And within a couple days, you're going to want to buy that product. So it's this concept's being used against you all day, every day. Uncle Birch just, if you're not going to take control of your program, somebody else is going to program you, and it will be to your demise, and you won't like it. So absolutely, that's brilliant. Black paper, we'd like able to see it. I may have to borrow that from you, John T. That's brilliant. Thank you. That's a good one. That's a good one. All right, we'll do one more. Let's see what we got. We'll do one more if I like it. If not, I'll skip to somebody else's question. It's my show. Damn, got a good audience here too, but gotta do some stuff. Still decompressing from Hexfest. It's a very different land than New Orleans here. And we wait. Let's see, maybe I missed one. Not really. Yeah, well, okay, so somebody said that. They did. People want to deny it. The Irish were more indentured servants than slaves proper. But it's kind of slave with an out, or it's like slave with a white privilege or something like that. But everybody that was first here, all of the peasants, they were indentured servants. They were slaves of a different kind. Now, people of the African persuasion don't want you to ever mention that. They believe it somehow takes away from the suffering and exploitation of their ancestors. If your ancestors were poor, they were enslaved by the rich to some extent, regardless of your skin color. And just because my ancestors were enslaved doesn't make the enslavement of your ancestors any less than. The problem is, people want to have simplistic narratives that fit on bumper sticker slogans like, white people are evil and all white people's ancestors owned slaves. Now, if you've been listening to Widdershins recently, my friend Utu Doctor put out a book where he talked about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, and that he caught hell. And my reading of everything that happened and why he caught hell is because Dr. Utu spoke a narrative that most people don't know. A narrative that was easily proven by going to Wikipedia right after reading an excerpt from his book. And the narrative that the Quakers were pinnacle in the organization of the Underground Railroad. Now, the Underground Railroad was not a railroad. It was a series of land and houses leading all the way up to Canada from the south that snuck black people through in the middle of the night up to Canada to escape slavery. Now, slaves, as you might know, did not own land. That would have been impossible to achieve without the Quakers. Now, Uncle Birch doesn't know of any Quakers in his ancestry, so this doesn't get me off the hook at all, but that's a fact. Quakers were right as fuck, and the Underground Railroad would not and could not have happened without the Quakers. Now, the proposing of that idea, which is not an idea, it's actually fact, and you can look it up immediately on Wikipedia, look up the Quakers and the Underground Railroad. It's a fact, and that fact angered a lot of the social justice warrior black people and the people, their allies, that kind of stuff, because it challenges the simplistic narrative that because of somebody's skin color, they are guilty of a great many things. Now, white privilege, sure, okay, we can't argue that. We have white privilege, we have white skin in this country. I'm not arguing that. This other thing of my ancestors were not slaves, and if they were, that somehow takes away from your ancestors being slaves. No, that white people, are not evil. The Quakers didn't own slaves. The Irish didn't own slaves. The Italians didn't own slaves, except for the elite. If we had them, I don't even know if we had them at that point. I don't think we did. They did not own slaves. But that's not even the argument that I'm making. The fact that my ancestors suffered does not take away from the suffering of your ancestors. It's the fact that we got to recognize, or we will always be persecuted by the wealthy. We will all be ruled by the rich, and we will never know it because we're worried about the color of some skin, because we're worried about how close to the equator their ancestors lived, which is all skin color is. Closer to the equator you were, darker your skin, period. That's all it is. It has nothing to do with anything else. So this idea that Hutu witch doctor put out just caused a huge stink, but that's the stink. It challenges the narrative. It's like Trump. It's like people want to believe these certain facts, and even though you present them with facts, they want to stick with their original belief, maybe because it's just too hard to accept. We live that in this country. I don't know where you are, but in this country, we live on lies, bullshit, absolute bullshit that's absolutely disproven every fucking 10 seconds on the news. But the cult members on Trump's side will not believe any facts. They talk about alternative facts. Now, Trump wants to buy Greenland because it's not for sale. And you know why he wants to buy it? Because it's green. Finally, after 1,000 years or so, somebody finally fell for that bullshit. Greenland's not green. Iceland's not ice. They were called that, so people wouldn't want to go there. Or so people would think there was something else. So Greenland is ice. But Trump sees Greenland because it's fucking stupid. And I don't care if you're a Trump supporter, suck my dick. I don't know why you would be on this channel anymore. We live in a world of absolute bullshit and lies in the United States, and maybe close to half the country will not ever listen to any facts because it would mean that they were wrong and perhaps they were stupid. And they would rather just follow the lie. Like, climate change isn't happening. We need clean coal. These kinds of things. All right, I'm going off on some other tangent. I really gotta go. So, thank you all. Merry meet, merry part, merry meet again.